Hey class, in today's lesson there are two parts. In the first part, we're going to ask ourselves, what are the components of an ecosystem? And we're going to be able to identify abiotic and biotic factors in an ecosystem once today's lesson is over. So to begin, look at the picture of the community garden that I've put up below. So what I want you to do is just list 6 different things that you see. So for example, if I was looking at this, I would say, I see people, I see trees, I see grass. You can list those 3 things and 3 more things, or you can just list 6 different things that you may see. So what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is all of the living and non-living things in an area. So this would include the plants, the animals, those are your living things, and then non-living things, which could be, rocks, precipitation, sunlight. These are all examples of non-living things in an area. So what is the scientific way to say a living thing? So we're scientists, right? Because we're studying science. So we want to sound smart. So the smart way, or the scientific way, to say a living thing is biotic factors. So biotic factors are all living things in an ecosystem, such as plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms. So the scientific way to say a non-living thing, since we just talked about the scientific way to say a living thing, is abiotic factors. So abiotic factors are all of the non-living things in an ecosystem. The abiotic factors in an ecosystem could include latitude, water, soil, temperature, air, wind, elevation, and our source of energy, which is usually the sun in our case. So to conclude the end of this first part, I want you to create a T-chart like the one below. And you need to classify the items from your previous list that you saw in your community gardens diagram, this one. These 6 things, I want you to categorize these 6 things in this T-chart. Abiotic factors, so for example, if you said sunlight, you put that in abiotic factors. And if you said plants or humans, you could put that in biotic factors. Once you're done with that, feel free to move on. So now we're going to go on to the next part of our lesson. I want you to be able to describe the relationship between abiotic and biotic factors in a region. So remember, I want you to describe the relationship between non-living factors and living factors in a region. We're going to ask ourselves, why are different plants and animals found in different places on Earth? So here's a little chart that shows you how we're moving from individual, so this could, for example, could be an animal like a fish, to a population, to community, to an ecosystem, to what we're going to study today, which is called a biomes, which then make up the biosphere. So a biome is a large geographical area that is known for the soil and climate conditions, as well as the plants and animals living there. So that is what a biome is. So there are biomes throughout the world. The United States is over here on the map, and this is the continent of North America. Our biomes consist of deserts, temperate forests, grassland. We actually have tons of different biomes, and you see throughout the world in places like South America, Africa, Asia, Europe. There are tons of different biomes that can compose one continent. So what determines the type of ecosystem that forms in a biome? So abiotic conditions, remember non-living conditions, such as elevation and climate, have the greatest impact in determining the type of ecosystem that forms in a region. So when we ask ourselves, what determines the type of ecosystem? Our abiotic, our non-living conditions determine this. So remember, let's just rewind. Climate. Climate is based on observations of weather that we have collected over many years. So observations can include annual precipitation, annual meaning yearly, and average temperature of a region. So if we look at this graph to the right, We see that if you're in a tropical rainforest biome, you usually experience a warmer temperature. So see, as we move to the left, it gets warmer. As we move to the right, it gets colder. This is in degrees Celsius, but that's okay. We still know that as we're moving over here, it's in the negatives, and as we're moving over here, it's positive. So if we're in a tropical rainforest, it tends to be a lot warmer, and we tend to receive tons of precipitation annually, over 400 centimeters. But for example, if we were looking at tundra, another type of biome, those are categorized by cold temperatures, -10 degrees Celsius, and very little precipitation. So, as we just mentioned, abiotic factors really do determine our types of biomes and ecosystems. So elevation of a location is its height above or below sea level. So as elevation increases, temperature decreases. So you can think of this as, climbing up a mountain. If you're climbing up a mountain, say for example, Mount Everest, as you're moving up away from base camp, it tends to get a lot colder. It's always freezing cold when you look at these examples of Mount Everest, because as elevation increases, your temperature decreases. So let's do a quick quiz. What abiotic factor will most likely have the greatest effect on a desert biome? A, air quality, B, precipitation, C, amount of sand, or D, temperature. If you said B, precipitation, you are correct. Next question. An increase in elevation of an area will likely result in A, an increase in air quality, B, a decrease in air quality, C, a decrease in temperature, and D, an increase in temperature. So if you said C, a decrease in temperature, you are correct. So we haven't studied anything about air quality, so we can cross out A and B. And we know from our relationship that we just talked about with climbing up mountains and how it gets a lot colder as you get higher, we know that the answer to this is C, a decrease in temperature. So now we want to ask ourselves, what abiotic factor has the greatest impact on biomes in North Carolina? So North Carolina has 3 different biomes: mountains, Piedmont, and coastal plains. So mountains are way to the west for us. So this would be, for example, Asheville, if you've ever heard of that. We in Charlotte are in the Piedmont region. And then when we're off to the coast, maybe out by Wilmington, or any of those coastal regions where you often experience flooding, those are coastal plains. So we know, based off of our 3 biomes, our mountains, our Piedmont, our coastal plains, that elevation, so how high we are, really determines what kind of biome we have in North Carolina. So what abiotic factor has the greatest impact on biomes in North Carolina? We just talked about this. So the abiotic factor, the non-living factor that has the greatest impact on creating the different biomes in North Carolina, is elevation. So what can happen to living things when abiotic factors in a biome change? So when abiotic factors such as climate change, the survival of plants and animals that live there can become threatened. So that's because plants and animals, they get used to living a certain way, just like us. And when things change and when these things can be really drastic, it changes their potential to be able to live. For example, if you think about the wildfires that just happened in Australia, a lot of those animals, such as koalas, their climate changed drastically. And because of that, koalas' lives were mainly threatened. And a lot of animals were also threatened because of those fires, but that's just an example. So if plants and animals are able to adapt to changes, they will continue to survive. So for example, if it got really cold in the United States, but we were able to adapt to that, maybe we wore coats more often or something like that, we would be able to survive. But if animals and plants are unable to adapt, the population may become extinct. So if we go back to our example with koalas, koalas are now functionally extinct because they were unable to adapt to the wildfires. I mean, who really could? It was so hot in Australia. So that's just another example. So let's ask ourselves, ecosystems are classified using what information? A, ecosystems are classified using types of plants only. B, ecosystems are classified using types of living things only. C, ecosystems are classified using both living and non-living factors. Or D, ecosystems are classified using living and non-living factors and location. So if you said D, ecosystems are classified using living and non-living factors and location, you are correct. So that's it for today's lesson. Make sure you complete your independent practice and your exit ticket. Thanks everyone. Bye.